You probably got the postcard. Everyone in the county got the postcard. Light blue, official seal, the kind of mailer you read for half a second and then drop in the recycling without thinking. Statewide Integrated Public Alert Test, Wednesday, 3 p.m. No action required. No action required. I want you to hold on to those 4 words, because for the rest of my life, I am going to be turning them over like a stone in my pocket. My name is Daniel Reyes. I run a small appliance repair shop on Halford Street with my brother Mateo. And at 2:58 that Wednesday afternoon, we were both standing in the back, elbow deep in a dryer that wasn't going to be fixed no matter what we did to it. And Mateo said, 2 minutes. You want the radio on for the thing? I said, sure, whatever. Put the radio on for the thing. That's the part I keep coming back to. How ordinary I was. How completely, stupidly ordinary. There was a sandwich on the counter. Half a sandwich. I never finished it. We had the old shop radio, the one with the bent antenna, tuned to the AM news station out of the city. Mateo turned it up. There was a weather guy talking about a cold front. Then the weather guy stopped mid-sentence. And there was that pause, that little dead air pocket that means a feed is switching over. And then the tones came. You know the tones. Everybody knows the tones. That harsh 3-note burst that makes your shoulders climb up around your ears. And then a voice started reading the test. And I knew, before my brain could put words to it, that something was wrong with the voice. I'll get to that. I have to do this in order or I'll lose it. The thing is, the words were right. That's what made it so hard to react to. The script was exactly what you'd expect. This is a test of the statewide emergency alert system. This is only a test. In the event of an actual emergency, the message you just heard would be followed by official information. Standard, boilerplate. The kind of thing a voice synthesizer has read 1,000 times. So if you weren't paying attention, you'd have heard nothing wrong at all. But Mateo and I, we work with sound all day. We listen to motors. We diagnose machines by ear, the way a doctor listens to a chest. A bearing going bad, a belt slipping, a compressor on its last legs, we hear it before we see it. And both of us, at the same moment, stopped what we were doing and looked at the radio. Because the voice reading the test had no breath in it. I don't mean it was robotic. We've all heard the robot voices, the text-to-speech ones, flat and clipped. This wasn't that. This had warmth. It had cadence. It rose and fell like a real man speaking, a calm male voice, a little tired, the kind of voice that does this job every day. But there were no breaths. A person reading that script out loud has to breathe. There are little catches, little intakes between phrases, the soft mechanics of a body keeping itself alive while it talks. We hear those sounds constantly without noticing them. Your ear expects them so completely that when they're gone, your body knows before your mind does. This voice never breathed, not once. It read the entire 40-second script in one unbroken column of air, and the air never ran out, and it never started over. Mateo set down the screwdriver, real quiet. He said, "Did you hear that?" And I said, "Yeah." And neither of us said anything else, because the voice wasn't finished. The voice wasn't finished because the test repeated. That part is normal. The alert tests always run twice. Tones, message, tones, message. We've all heard it loop. So when it came back around, I told myself, okay, this is a recording. It's the same recording playing again. Whatever's weird about the breathing is just an artifact, just the way they processed the file. Some new automated system. Budget cuts. They fed the script into software, and this is what came out. People are going to complain. There'll be an article about it. Ha ha, the creepy alert voice. Local color. I genuinely thought that. For about 9 seconds, I had myself convinced. Then the second reading reached the line, "In the event of an actual emergency." And it was different. Not the words. The words were identical. But the first time through, that line had been calm, even bored almost. The second time through, the same voice, the same flawless, breathless delivery, slowed down on the word actual, leaned on it, like a man choosing to emphasize something, like a man who wanted you to understand that the word mattered. A recording does not do that. A recording plays the same way every time. That is the entire definition of a recording. Mateo looked at me. He'd caught it too. "That's not a loop," he said. "No," I said. "It said it different." I heard it. The tones came again to close it out, and then the dead air pocket, and then the weather guy from the city station came back like nothing had happened, picking up his cold front exactly where he'd left off. And the whole shop felt 30 degrees colder than it had 2 minutes before. I turned the radio down. I didn't turn it off. I want you to remember that I didn't turn it off. Here is where I tell you I'm not crazy. And here is how I know. I picked up my phone because that's what you do now. You reach for the phone to find out if the thing that just happened to you happened to anyone else. And it had. The county had a community page, the kind where people post about lost dogs and potholes, and it was already moving. Anyone else just hear the alert test? Something was off about it. The voice freaked my kids out. My daughter started crying, and she's 11. She said the man didn't breathe. She said the man didn't breathe. An 11-year-old, across town, who has no idea what a bearing sounds like or what we listen for in this shop, heard the exact same thing we heard, and put it in the exact same words. The man didn't breathe. Then a comment that stayed with me. A woman named Carol, who I later learned taught 3rd grade for 30 years, wrote, "My husband is hard of hearing and reads lips and never reacts to the radio." He looked up. He said it sounded like someone describing a person's voice instead of being one. I read that 3 times. Like someone describing a person's voice instead of being one. I didn't know what it meant. I still don't fully. But it scratched at something. The voice had been correct in every way you could measure, and wrong in every way you could feel. And that woman's deaf husband had found the only language for it. Mateo was reading over my shoulder. He stepped back. He said, "Daniel, look at the timestamps." I looked. Every post was from 2:58. The test ran at 3 o'clock. Every post describing the voice was timestamped before the voice could have existed. Now, I know what you're thinking, because I thought it too. Phone clocks drift. Server time and local time don't always match. People misremember when they hit post. There are a dozen boring explanations, and I reached for every single one of them, because the boring explanations are the railing you grab when the floor tilts. But these, or Italianoids, weren't drifting by seconds. They were 2 full minutes early. Carol's post about her husband. The woman with the crying daughter. A guy named Pete who just wrote, "What the hell was that?" All of them, 2:58. And the test, the actual broadcast, hit the airwaves at 3 o'clock sharp. We watched the clock. The city station's automation is precise to the second. Mateo said the thing I was scared to say. He said, "They heard it before it played." I told him no. I told him that's impossible. That's a glitch. That's the platform backdating posts or our phones being wrong. I was very firm about it. I was firm the way you're firm with a kid who's scared of the dark, where the firmness is really for you. and while I was being firm, my phone buzzed in my hand. It was an automated message from the county alert system, the same system that had just run the test. A follow-up, the kind they send to confirm a drill, went out. It said, "Test complete. Thank you for participating. We heard you clearly. We heard you clearly. A test does not hear you. A test broadcasts. It does not receive." I put the phone in my pocket. My hand was not steady. The first thing I did, once I could think again, was the most boring and reasonable thing a person can do. I called the county. There's a public number on the back of the alert postcard. Emergency Management Office. I dug the card out of the recycling. I'm a hoarder of paper. Mateo gives me grief about it. And for once, it paid off, and I called. And I want to walk you through this call because it's important. Because it is the moment when the people who were supposed to have answers turned out to be standing on the same tilting floor as the rest of us. A woman answered, tired, pleasant, clearly fielding a flood of calls. Emergency management. I told her I was calling about the alert test. I tried to sound calm and credible, a small business owner, not a crank. I said the voice on the test had sounded unusual, and I wanted to know what system they were using. There was a pause, not a confused pause, a careful one. She said, "Sir, can I ask what you heard, in your own words?" Now that's not how that conversation should go. If 100 cranks are calling to complain about a creepy voice, you say, "Yes, sir. We're aware. It's a new vendor. Have a nice day." You don't ask the caller to describe their experience in their own words. You ask that when you're collecting data. You ask that when you don't know either. So I told her, no breath. Read it twice and change the second time, the timestamps, the follow-up message. When I got to the follow-up message, "We heard you clearly," she stopped me. She said, "We didn't send that." I said, "I have it on my phone." She said, "Sir, our system can't send free text follow-ups. It can only send pre-loaded templates. There is no template with those words. I'm looking at the list right now." And then she was quiet for a second. And when she came back, her pleasant, tired voice had something new under it. And she said, "Can you take a screenshot of that message and send it to me, and don't delete it?" I sent her the screenshot. She gave me a direct extension and told me to call back in an hour. While I waited, I did what everybody does. I went looking. Mateo closed the shop early. We put the sign in the window, "Family Emergency," which felt dramatic at the time and now feels like an understatement. And we sat in the back with 2 laptops and tried to be detectives. We started with the simplest question. Who reads the alert tests? Turns out, for a routine statewide test, it's almost always automated. There's a vendor, a company contracted by the state, that maintains the text-to-speech engine and the voice library. The voice you hear has a name. They're licensed, like the voices in your phone's GPS. There's a real person somewhere who originally recorded thousands of phonemes, and now their voice says recalculating and shelter in place forever. So I figured, find the vendor, find the voice, find out what software version they pushed, and the breathlessness explains itself. Mystery solved, embarrassment survived. We found the vendor, a company called Verint Civic Systems. Clean website, government contracts listed. The whole thing. And on their page about the alert voice library, they had the male voice they use statewide. They even had a sample, a little play button. Mateo pressed it. It was not the voice from the test. It was close. Same general register, same calm professionalism. But this one breathed. This one had the little human catches. This was clearly a recording of a real man, processed and chopped into syllables, but a man with lungs. The voice on our test had been imitating this voice, the way a very good forgery imitates a signature, close enough that nobody who wasn't staring would notice. But it had added one thing the original didn't have, which was a kind of seamlessness no body can produce. And it had removed one thing everybody has, which is the need to stop and pull in air. I looked at the vendor's voice sample for a long time. Then I noticed the date on Verint Civic Systems' latest news page. The most recent post was from 3 years ago. The company had been dissolved for 3 years. I called the woman back at the county on her direct extension, right on the hour, like she'd said. It rang a long time. I almost hung up. Then she answered, and she sounded different. Lower, like she'd moved to a quieter room. "It's Daniel Reyes," I said. "The appliance shop. You told me to call back." "I remember," she said. "Mr. Reyes, I'm going to ask you not to repeat what I tell you. And then I'm going to tell you anyway, because I think people deserve to know. Is that all right?" I said yes. My mouth was dry. She said the screenshot I sent the "We heard you clearly" message had appeared on 3 other phones in her own office. Co-workers. People who never registered for the alerts. People who hadn't given the system their numbers. The message had arrived on phones that the system had no way to reach. She said the message had no sender ID. Not blocked, not unknown, empty. A field that's never empty, empty. And she said the part that made me sit down on the floor of my own shop. She said the state had not authorized a test for that day. I said, "What do you mean? I got the postcard. Everyone got the postcard." She said, "I know. We're holding one of the postcards right now. It's real. It came from our print contractor. But there is no test order in the system. Nobody scheduled it. Nobody approved it. The postcards went out for a test that does not exist in any of our records. A test nobody ordered. A voice from a company that's been dead 3 years. A follow-up message from a sender that isn't there." "Mr. Reyes," she said, "I think the test was the message. I think it was telling us it can reach us. And I think it just proved it can." That night, the community page got strange in a way that didn't make the news, the way the truest things never do. It started with Carol, the retired teacher. She posted that her granddaughter, same 11-year-old who'd cried, the one who said the man didn't breathe, had drawn a picture. Carol posted the photo of it. She said, "I'm sharing this because 3 other parents in my old class group sent me almost the same drawing tonight, and I can't explain it." The drawing was a stick figure of a man. Nothing unusual about that. Except the kid had drawn him with his mouth open, very wide, a big oval. And inside the mouth, instead of teeth, she'd drawn a tiny version of their whole town. Little square houses, a water tower, streets, a man with a town inside his open mouth. And then the other parents started posting. And it was true. Different kids, different streets, kids who'd never met. A boy 2 miles away had drawn the same thing, open mouth, town inside. A set of twins. A 4-year-old who couldn't write his own name, yet had filled a page with one enormous mouth and a scribble of buildings in the dark of it. People in the comments tried to make it normal. Kids talk to each other. Kids copy each other. It's a phase. It's the internet. But these kids hadn't talked to each other. Some of them were too young to be online. The 4-year-old didn't have a phone. He'd just sat down after dinner and drawn the inside of a mouth. I showed Mateo. He didn't say anything for a while. Then he said, "The deaf guy was right." "What do you mean?" "Carol's husband. He said it sounded like something describing a voice instead of being one. Mateo tapped the photo. These kids aren't drawing what they heard. They're drawing where it's speaking from. The second test came at 3 o'clock the next afternoon. There was no postcard this time, no warning. I was driving running to the hardware store, trying to do something normal with my hands shaking on the wheel, and the car radio cut itself over. It didn't switch stations. I want to be precise. I was on a music station, a song playing, and the song didn't stop. The tones came under the song, through it. The 3 notes, harsh and flat, sitting inside the music like they'd always been there, and I'd just now been allowed to hear them. And then the voice, the breathless voice, the same calm, tired man who didn't have lungs. It said, "This is a test of the statewide emergency alert system." And then it said something that is not in the script. It said, in exactly the same calm tone, with exactly the same care, "There is no emergency yet. We are still counting." I pulled the car over. My hands wouldn't do anything else. The voice said, "This is only a test. Thank you for participating. We can hear you breathing." The music came back. Same song, same place, as if it had never been interrupted, because for the radio, it hadn't. I checked later. The station logged no alert, no interruption. The DJ that afternoon had no idea anything had happened. It hadn't gone out over the air. It had gone out over me. I sat in that car on the shoulder of the road for 10 minutes, with my hand pressed over my own mouth, feeling myself breathe, knowing that something was listening to the one sound the voice itself could not make. When I got home, I called Mateo, and I couldn't get the words out right. He came over. He brought Carol. Actually, they'd been messaging. The whole community page had quietly reorganized itself into a smaller group of people who weren't trying to explain it away anymore. And Carol had become a kind of center of gravity for them. She was 71 years old, and steadier than any of us. I told them what the voice said. We are still counting. Carol got very quiet, and then she said she thought she understood the postcards now. She said, "Think about what a census is. Think about what a test really is. You don't test a system to make sure it works. You test it to find out who's listening, to find out how many you can reach. The whole point of an alert test is to count the people on the other end." She said, "It sent the postcards because that's what you do before a count. You announce it. You give notice. No action required. You just sit still and let yourself be numbered." Mateo said, "Numbered for what?" And nobody answered, because the voice had already answered, hadn't it? There is no emergency yet. Yet. We started comparing what each of us had gotten, and the pattern came clear in a way I didn't like. The first test, the public one, the one over the radio, everybody got that. The whole county, the wide net, the head count. The second test, the one that came through my own car with no record anywhere, that one was personal. That one only came to people who had reacted to the first, the people who noticed, the people who leaned in. Carol had gotten one, in her kitchen, with no radio on at all. The woman with the crying daughter had gotten one. Pete, though what the hell was that guy, had gotten one while mowing his lawn, with ear protection on. And he said he heard it perfectly clearly through the earmuffs and the mower both, which is not possible, and which is exactly the kind of not possible we'd all stopped arguing with. The ones who noticed got a second message, like the first test had sorted us, like we'd raised our hands. Here is what scared Carol most, and once she said it, it scared me most too. She said, Daniel, I've been calling people. The ones from the page, checking on them. And there's a group I can't reach. She'd made a list. Old habit, she said. 30 years of taking attendance. She had names of everyone who'd posted about the first test, everyone who'd described the voice, everyone who'd shared a kid's drawing. And she'd been going down the list, one by one, the way you'd check on neighbors after a storm. Most people answered, frightened, but there. But a handful didn't. And it wasn't random. The ones she couldn't reach were the ones who'd posted the strongest reactions to that first test, the most insistent, the ones who'd written things like, "I will never forget that sound, and that voice is going to haunt me." The ones who'd noticed the hardest were the ones who were now silent. She'd driven to one of their houses that afternoon. A man named Errol lived alone, had posted a long upset thread about the breathing. His car was in the driveway, his door was unlocked, his lights were on. His phone was on the kitchen table, and on the screen was the alert app open, showing one message. Test complete. Thank you for participating. And Errol was not there. Not in the house, not in the yard, not anywhere. Carol had walked through every room calling his name. The TV was on. There was food in the microwave with 11 seconds left on the timer, paused mid-heat, the door closed, the food cold. She said the strangest thing in the house was the bathroom mirror. Not because anything was written on it. The opposite. She said it was fogged, like someone had just taken a hot shower. But the shower was dry and cold, and hadn't been run in hours. The mirror was fogged with the breath of someone who'd been standing there breathing at it. Recently, for a long time. She'd wiped it with her sleeve before she left. She said she didn't know why. She said it felt rude to leave it. "It's collecting them," she said. "It's collecting breath." By the third day, it stopped being a thing only we knew. Because the hospitals started noticing. And you can't keep hospitals quiet. It came out sideways at first, the way these things do. A respiratory therapist who Carol knew from church mentioned it to her, off the record. And then it was in the regional news within hours because too many people were saying the same thing. The hospitals were seeing a cluster, not a virus, nothing infectious. People coming into emergency rooms across 3 counties, all of them describing the same symptom. And the symptom was this: they had stopped being able to feel themselves breathe. Not stopped breathing. That's the thing. Their oxygen was fine. Their lungs were fine. Every machine said they were breathing normally, in and out, regular as a clock. But the people themselves couldn't feel it. They'd put a hand on their own chest and feel nothing moving. They'd hold a mirror to their own mouth and see no fog. They were breathing by every measurement. And they could not perceive a single breath. And every one of them, when the doctors took a history, had heard the alert test, had noticed the voice, had said, at some point, the man didn't breathe. "I think you see it. I saw it." The voice didn't breathe, and now the people who'd noticed that it didn't breathe were losing the ability to feel their own breath. As if it were being transferred. As if some accounting was being settled. As if the thing on the other end of the test was correcting an imbalance taking from the noticers the very thing it lacked. One doctor, interviewed on the news, said the closest thing he could compare it to was a sensory disorder, a glitch in the brain's monitoring of the body. He used careful words. He did not say the word test. He did not say the word voice. But his hands were shaking on camera. And at the end, he said something he probably wasn't supposed to. He said, "Please, if you hear it, don't listen closely." Don't listen closely. That became the whole thing overnight. That became the only advice anyone had. It spread faster than the official statements, faster than the news, because it was the only instruction that felt like it might actually do something. The theory, and it was just a theory, cobbled together by frightened people in a group chat at 2 in the morning, was that the count worked through attention. The first test went out wide and quiet, a net, and the people it caught were the ones who noticed. Noticing was raising your hand. Noticing was saying present. The harder you noticed, the more clearly you were counted. And the more clearly you were counted, the sooner it came for your breath. So the advice was, if you hear the tones, don't lean in. Don't analyze. Don't try to figure out what's wrong with the voice. Let it wash over you like background noise. Be one of the people who'd say, the next day, oh, was there a test? I wasn't really paying attention. Those people, the not paying attention people, were fine. That was the awful confirmation of it. Mateo and I knew several of them. They'd had the radio on. They'd half heard the whole thing. And when we asked them about the breathless voice, they looked at us blankly. It sounded like a normal test to me. They were sleeping fine. They could feel their own chests rising. The ignorant were safe. The attentive were being counted. And here's the cruelty of it, the part that kept me up. By now, I had noticed enormously. I had called the county. I had hunted the dead vendor. I had pulled the car over with my hand on my mouth. I had noticed harder than almost anyone alive. I was very, very high on the list. And there is no way to unnotice something. You cannot make yourself not know. Attention only goes one direction. I had already raised my hand. I just hadn't been called yet. Mateo stopped feeling his breath on the 4th morning. He didn't tell me right away. That's my little brother for you. He made coffee. He opened the shop out of habit even though no customers were coming. And it was only around noon when I caught him with his palm flat against his own sternum, pressing hard, his face doing something I'd never seen it do, that I understood. How long? I said. Since I woke up. He pressed harder, like he could push the feeling back into himself. It's there. The machine at the urgent care said it's there. I'm breathing, Danny. I can't feel it. It's like the part of me that knew I was alive got switched off, and everything else kept running. I made him sit down. I got the little mirror from the bathroom, the shaving mirror, and I held it under his nose, because I needed to see it for myself. I needed it to not be true. It didn't fog. He was talking. He was warm. His pulse was going. And the mirror under his breath stayed perfectly clear, like he was already a photograph of himself. He took it from my hand, very gently, and he set it face down on the workbench so he wouldn't have to look at it again. He said, I noticed first, remember? I'm the one who said, did you hear that? I set the screwdriver down. I noticed before you did. He had, by about a second. My little brother had leaned in 1 second sooner than me. It's counting up, he said, from the people who noticed first. And I understood that he was telling me I had time, that the thing was moving through us in the order we'd raised our hands. And Mateo was ahead of me in line, and he was telling me to use whatever time that bought me. So I tried to get ahead of it. Of course I did. He was my brother. The theory said attention was the mechanism. Notice and you're counted. Counted and your breath is collected. Fine. If attention was the door, maybe attention could be the lock. That was the reasoning anyway, born of desperation at the kitchen table with Carol and 3 others who were willing to think instead of run. The first idea was the simplest. Overwhelm it. If it counted the ones who noticed, what if everyone noticed at once? What if instead of a few raised hands, it got a whole stadium, the whole county, a number so big the count broke? We didn't really believe it. But Carol had spent her life believing that the response to a frightening thing is to gather people, not scatter them. And so we tried. We went public. The small group of us. We put together everything, the time stamps, the dead vendor, the drawings, the hospital cluster, the "we heard you clearly" messages, and we pushed it out everywhere we could. Not as a creepy story, as a warning. If you hear the tones, here is what is happening. Here is what we think it does. Do not listen closely. It spread. It spread fast, because by now, enough people had had their own small private wrongness, their own moment of the floor tilting, and our warning gave it shape. And it did nothing. Or rather, it did the opposite of nothing. It made it worse. Because to read our warning, to really take it in, to understand it, was itself an act of noticing. We had built a perfect machine for making people lean in. Every person who read our careful warning and felt the chill of recognition raised their hand. We were Carol taking attendance for the thing that was counting. The hospital clusters tripled within a day of our warning going wide. I have to live with that. We were trying to help, and we fed it. The most attentive, most careful, most caring people. The ones who read warnings and take them seriously. The ones who noticed those were exactly the ones it wanted. And we rang the dinner bell. The careless never read a word of it. The careless were fine. Carol figured out the real shape of it on the 5th day, and she figured it out the way she'd done everything, by taking attendance. She'd kept her list the whole time, updating it. Who'd lost the feeling of their breath and when, and in what order. And one night, she spread it all out, and she saw it. It wasn't counting up from the first noticer toward the last. We'd had that wrong. It was more careful than that, more patient. She said, "It's not collecting people, it's collecting a complete set." She'd noticed that it never took 2 people from the same household. Errol lived alone, taken. But families where everyone noticed, it only took 1. It never took both of a married couple. It took 1 from each. It was, she said, like it wanted 1 breath from every place, 1 from every street, 1 from every household that had answered the count. A representative, a sample. It was building a map of the county out of breath. 1 held breath per location. The way you'd press a leaf from every kind of tree to make a complete collection. The children's drawings. The town inside the open mouth. The kids had been showing us the finished thing, the whole map of the place, held inside it, building by building, breath by breath. It doesn't want all of us, Carol said. It wants 1 of each. It wants to be able to say it has the whole county, a complete record. And once it has 1 breath from every place that answered. She didn't finish. She didn't have to. There is no emergency yet. We are still counting. When the count finished, when the set was complete, the test would be over. And then, presumably, would come the thing that tests are tests of. I asked her the only question that mattered to me. Mateo, is he the one from our place? Is he it for us? If they've already taken him, does that mean they won't take me? Carol looked at me with the kindest, most terrible face. She said, "Daniel, they haven't taken him. He can still feel. No, he can't feel his breath, but he's still here. They're holding him. They're holding all of them. Nobody who lost the feeling has disappeared like Errol did. Errol lived alone, so Errol was the only candidate for his place. But your house has 2. 2 candidates, 1 slot. It hasn't chosen between you yet," she said. 1 slot. 2 brothers. I understood then what Mateo had been doing. Why he'd told me he noticed first. Why he'd set the mirror face down so calmly. He'd already done the math. He thought it would take him because he'd noticed first, and he was, in his quiet way, trying to make peace with being our household's entry in the count so that I'd be spared. But Carol's list said otherwise. The order it took people wasn't first noticed. Where there were two candidates, it held both and it waited. And it chose, and the pattern of who it chose, when she laid it out, made my stomach drop. In every two-candidate household, it had taken the one who was paying more attention right now, not who noticed first, who was noticing most. It was a live count. It updated. The brother, the spouse, the roommate who was leaning in hardest at the moment of choosing that was the one whose breath it kept. Mateo had lost the feeling because for 4 days, he'd been the one quietly carrying it, watching, worrying, while I ran around making phone calls and feeling like the active one. But I'd been active in a scattered way. Mateo had been attentive, steady, focused, present. He'd been noticing the way you notice a sick child in the next room completely, without pause. And now I was the one leaning in hardest. Because now I knew the rule. And knowing the rule made me watch it like a hawk, made me attend to it with everything I had, made me the most attentive person in my own house by a mile. By trying to understand how to save my brother, I had become the better candidate for his place. I realized this, sitting at the table with Carol's list in my hands. And I felt my own breath, felt it. That small, ordinary miracle of my chest rising, and I knew that the moment I lost that feeling would be the moment I had successfully traded places with him. And I wanted to. God help me. I sat there and I wanted to. I didn't tell Mateo what I'd figured out. He figured it out himself because he knows me, and because I'm a bad liar, and because he caught me at 3 a.m, standing in the dark of the shop, with my hand on my own chest, deliberately, intentionally, trying to feel it leave, trying to notice my own breathing so hard that the count would take me instead of him. He turned the light on. "Don't," he said. "You don't get to decide this. Neither do you. That's the whole point, Danny. Nobody gets to decide. It decides. And you standing here at 3 a.m, trying to win a contest you don't understand. You might just get us both." That stopped me, because he was right. And I hadn't thought of it. We'd assumed 1 slot per household. But we'd assumed a lot of things. What if my forcing it broke the rule? What if it just took whoever it could? We stood there in the light. My little brother, who couldn't feel himself breathe, telling me to stop trying to die for him. He said quieter, "Carol said it wants one of each, one from every place. So here's what I keep thinking. What if we stop being two candidates? What if we stop being from the same place?" "What do you mean?" "I mean, I leave. I drive somewhere far. I become a different place on its map. And then your house only has you. And it takes you. And I'm a different entry, in a different county. Maybe one that hasn't finished counting." He almost smiled. Or maybe I drive far enough that I'm off the map completely. It was insane. It was the kind of plan you make at 3 a.m. We both knew he wasn't going to leave me. We didn't get to finish the argument because the count was finishing without us. It came over the community page first, what was left of it. Carol's list, the one she'd been keeping so carefully, started filling in faster than she could update it. Street after street, one from each. The map of the county completing itself, breath by breath, like a held inhale spreading across the whole region. And you could feel it. I don't know how else to say it. The air over those last days had gotten close. Heavy. The way it gets before a storm that won't break. Like the whole sky was a chest that had drawn a breath in and was holding it, and waiting. Birds stopped. I noticed that on the 5th evening. The county is full of birds. You stop hearing them because they're always there. And that evening, they weren't. No insects either. Everything that breathes had gone still, as if it too were being counted, as if it too were trying not to be noticed. Carol called me. Her voice was strange. She said, "It's almost done. I've got entries from nearly every place now. There's only a few left blank." She read me the blanks. A handful of streets where it hadn't chosen yet. Households with more than one candidate where it was still deciding. Our street was on the list of blanks. "It's saving the hard ones for last," she said. "The ones where it has a choice to make, Daniel. When the last blank fills in, the count is complete. And then," her voice caught, the first time I'd ever heard it catch. "And then I think we find out what the test was for." Our street was one of the last blanks on the map. I'm recording this part as it happens. I started recording about an hour ago, when I understood we were one of the last blank spaces, because I still think that if any of us get counted, somebody should have the whole thing in order. So if you're hearing this, it got out somehow. That's good. That means something survived to carry it. It's 2:54 in the afternoon. Mateo is here. Carol came over. She wouldn't let us be alone for this. She said attendance means showing up. And she showed up. There are a couple of others in the next room. We're all in my shop on Halford Street because if it's going to choose, we decided we'd rather be together when it does. The light is wrong. I want to describe it because it's the kind of detail that matters. It's the middle of the afternoon, and the light coming through the front windows has gone the color of an old photograph. Brownish. Still, the dust in the air isn't moving. I tapped the window and the dust didn't move. Mateo has his hand on my shoulder. He can't feel himself breathe, but he can feel my shoulder. And I can feel his hand. And I'm trying very hard right now not to notice my own breathing, because I know what noticing does. And I know our house has 2 candidates and only 1 slot. But you can't not notice. That's the trap. Try it. Try right now to not pay attention to your own breathing. You can't. The moment you decide not to, it's all you can feel. The rise, the fall, the little pause at the top. I can feel mine perfectly right now, every breath, which I think means it hasn't chosen me yet. Mateo can't feel his, which means it's still holding him as a candidate, not released, not chosen, just pending. It's 2:56. Carol is holding her list. 3 blanks left on the whole map. Ours is 1. It's 2:57. The radio in the corner just turned itself on. I didn't touch it. Mateo didn't touch it. It's the old one, the one with the bent antenna, the one that started all of this, and it just clicked on by itself to a dead, hissing channel. It's 2:58. And the tones are starting. The tones came. 3 notes. The same harsh 3 notes, except in the shop, in person, with no station and no broadcast, just the dead radio and the brown, still light. They didn't sound like an alert. They sounded like someone clearing a space to speak. Then the voice, the breathless voice, the calm, tired man with no lungs, filling the whole room, not loud, but complete, the way it had read the test in one unbroken column of air. It said, "This is the conclusion of the statewide emergency alert system test. The count is nearly complete. Thank you for participating." And then it started reading names. Our names. The blanks. It read a name from one of the other last streets, a name I didn't know, a stranger's name, said with that terrible care, and Carol made a sound and put her hand over her mouth. And I understood that somewhere across the county, that person had just lost the feeling of their breath forever. had just become their place's entry, had just been filed. 2 blanks left. It read another stranger, another sound from Carol, smaller this time, the sound of a teacher marking a child absent. 1 blank left, ours. The voice paused. It is the only time I've ever heard it pause, and I don't think it was for breath, because it doesn't breathe. I think it paused because it had a choice to make. 2 candidates, 1 slot. The brother who couldn't feel his breath and the brother who could feel every one. It said, "From this household." And I did the only thing I could think of. The only move left. I am not brave. I want that on the record. I was not brave. I was just out of options and out of time, and it was my little brother. I stopped trying not to notice. I let go of all of it. I noticed my breathing with everything I had. I leaned in. I made myself the most attentive, most present, most fully counted person in that room, in that house, on that street. I raised my hand as high as it would go. I said out loud, into the brown still air, "Me, take me, I'm right here, I'm listening." The voice said my name, Daniel Reyes. And I felt it. I felt it the way you feel a sound stop that sudden absence, when a fridge you didn't know was humming finally clicks off. The feeling of my own breath, that small, constant proof, switched off mid-inhale. I'm breathing right now. I can see my chest moving if I look. But I can't feel it. There's nothing there. I am a photograph that's still talking. Mateo made a noise like he'd been hit. He grabbed me. And here's the thing, the moment my breath went, his came back. I watched it happen. I watched my little brother gasp and clutch his own chest and feel it move under his hand for the first time in 2 days and start to cry, because the count had chosen, and it had chosen me, and choosing me released him. 1 household, 1 entry, I'm ours. Carol looked at her list. Her hands were shaking so hard the paper rattled. There were no more blanks. The map was complete. The voice said, "The count is complete. Thank you for participating. This concludes the test." And then, and I need you to hear this part, because this is the part I don't have an answer for. This is the part that's kept me sitting here recording, instead of doing anything else. The voice said one more thing, gently, almost kindly, in that calm, tired, breathless tone. It said, "In the event of an actual emergency, the people we have collected will be notified first." The radio clicked off. The light came back. Ordinary afternoon light, gold and moving, dust drifting in it. Outside, a bird started up. Then another. The storm pressure broke. The sky exhaled. Everyone exhaled. Everyone except the ones who'd been counted. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm still here. That's the part people don't expect. I didn't disappear like Errol. None of us did. The chosen ones, the entries. We're all still walking around, going to work, eating dinner. From the outside you can't tell. My oxygen is perfect. Every machine says I'm breathing fine, regular as a clock. I just can't feel it. I'll never feel it again. I've stopped checking the mirror. There are a few thousand of us across 3 counties. We've found each other, the way the noticing always finds each other. We have a name for ourselves now, half a joke, the collected. We meet up, we compare notes. We're trying to understand what we are. Because the voice said the people we have collected will be notified first. And that means we're not finished. That means we're a list that's being kept, a mailing list, a set of contacts on file for some actual emergency that hasn't come yet. We were the test of whether it could reach us, count us, hold us. It passed. And now we're waiting for the thing the test was a test of. Notified first. First responders to an emergency nobody else will know about until it's too late, or first to be reached when whatever this was decides the real message is ready to send. Mateo can feel his breath. He's safe. He hovers over me now, the way I used to hover over him. And I let him, because it makes him feel like he can do something. And maybe he can. I don't know. I'm ending the recording here because the rest is just waiting. And you don't need to hear me wait. I want to leave you with the only thing I actually know. The only practical thing, the thing I'd put on a postcard and mail to every house in the country if I thought it would help. When you hear the tones, and you will eventually, wherever you are, because I don't think this stopped at 3 counties. I think 3 counties was just the first test of many. When you hear the tones, and a calm, tired voice starts to read, do not lean in. Do not analyze the breathing. Do not try to figure out what's wrong with it. Do not notice. Be the person who shrugs and says, oh, was there a test? I wasn't really paying attention. Be careless. Be distracted. Be one of the lucky ones who never gets counted because they never raise their hand. I know that's a strange thing to ask. At the end of a recording designed to make you pay very close attention. I know that by listening this carefully, all the way to the end, you've been doing exactly the thing I'm telling you not to do. I'm sorry about that. I really am. You noticed. You leaned in. You're listening this closely right now to a voice you can't quite explain. And somewhere, something is counting. No action required.